there's nothing that you could read in a book. And you just said it best when it comes is knowing the market. And I've done it as well. I've come up with what I thought are great ideas, and I launch it out there, and nothing happens. I've spent 2 years ago. I spent on a Wadapalooza campaign for my old company called Formula Supplementation, and I spent close to $7,000 in creating this campaign, this sweepstakes, and putting this out there. And this is gonna be great. It's gonna get us 15,000 more followers, and we're gonna be the hit. Nobody gave a fuck. It was such a failure. But I will tell you what it did do, though. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about lead pages. It taught me about sweepstakes. It taught me the legalities behind it. So it's not a complete loss. Right. It's so now when somebody comes to me and they're like, "Oh, we do lead page generation, yada yada yada," it rolls off my back, because I'm like, dude, I know I'm very, very, very. I'm in tune with that world of lead pages and sales funnels.
You
and
just
so on
paid
and so
for
forth.
an education. That's all.
Exactly, and that's what I take it as.
But that's how you have to look at it. Not everybody looks at things that way, and
right.
If you can have the humility to look at, to always consider yourself a student, always be learning, even if something falls apart. No, failure. I'm a believer like you that failure can be a good thing.
Right.
It absolutely is a good thing, so long as you open yourself up to that. Look, starting in, being a small company, not having a staff of 8, 10, 12 people like I have had in the past. I've had to learn a lot of skill sets that I've, for years, kind of pawned off on other people. I have to learn how to write treatments. I shouldn't say write treatments. Now that I'm doing things myself and spending my own money, I have to do certain things that before I would just pawn off on other people. And, learning how to do simple edit, how to cut down a Skype edit, how to generate, treatments on a consistent basis. All kinds of things that I've had to learn how to do now. Same with true crime, right? So I made a conscious decision to get into the true crime space. But I don't know shit about true crime. I've never produced a true crime series in my life. I can honestly say that. Doesn't mean that I can't. I'm certainly smart enough to figure it out. So with that said, I'm like, I'm going to get into the true crime space. I called the 2 networks that I know that do 24-hour true crime, Oxygen and Discovery ID. I have friends at both places that I said, hey guys, I'm jumping into the true crime game, and from this point on, you're going to hear from me every couple of weeks. I'm going to pitch you 3-4 ideas every time I talk. You're going to pass on all of them for the foreseeable future. I understand that, but with every time I pitch you a show, all I ask in return is you give me real feedback. Tell me why that idea does not make sense for your network, right? So I will go pitch them a show. Then the feedback will come back. All right, Danny, we don't really focus so much on, for example, one is I talk to these networks, I establish that relationship, and then it's up to me to call them every couple of weeks. It's up to me to pitch them projects. It's up to me to hound them for feedback. And then as a week turns into a month, turns into 6 months, turns into a year, what happens in that time? I get smarter. Every one of my ideas gets better as time goes on.
Right.
To the point where, oh, and by the way, that's one thing. The other thing that I did at the same time was I created a database, and I wrote down in this database, I have written down every single at this point now, I have every single show that Discovery ID and Oxygen has made in the last 4 years. Oxygen a little bit less because they have only been true crime for about 2-3 years, but Discovery ID has been a true crime network forever. So what do? I go and I write all their shows down. I write down who produces them, how many episodes have been produced, the storylines for each episode, the log line, like the paragraph that explains what that show is. And then once I have that all written down and I've absorbed all this information, I can now look at it from 30,000 feet in the air and say, how does my idea fit into that? Because that's what they're buying and that's what they're airing.
Right.
My point is this, man. You got to be your own educator.
Yeah.
If you want to, like, it's okay. They might pass on my first 20 ideas, which, by the way, they did. They pass on all my shit all the time. It was up to me to get the feedback, and then to understand the feedback and apply it into my new development. I'm happy to say that in the last 4 months, I've sold 3 true crime projects to these true crime networks. And it's projects that they believe in. It's projects that I've taken the time to develop with the understanding of what makes sense for their network. You see what I mean?
Right, absolutely.
And I feel good about the fact that I went to school. The thing is, I went to Danny Villa University, and my teacher was Danny Villa, and I just had to fucking learn by myself.
Right.
But I'm much smarter now than I was 6 months ago. And now I can defend myself when it comes to true crime. Now, you see what I mean? So
yeah.
At the end of the day, nobody cares about you more than you. If you want it, you gotta look inward and ask yourself, how bad do you want it?
Yeah, and I think that the fact that you were talking about gathering all this information. That's not the sexy part.
There's nothing sexy about it.
Nothing sexy about it. You're doing all the homework, and it's one of our. I've handed over one of our next projects, our next event. I handed it over to one of our coaches here, Ozzy, and he's the director of programming for this. And we talked a little bit about it, and he came back to me 2 days later, and he showed me the layout for the workout floor and the equipment and all this stuff. And I'm looking at him, and he's super excited about this. And I absorbed it all. I wasn't a complete dick off the bat, and I absorbed it all. And then I said to him, "You haven't earned this right yet. You haven't earned the right yet to program the workouts, to design the floor. That's the sexy part. That's the fun part. You've skipped 3 steps before getting there. You got to grind through the foundational stuff and do the annoying, detailed work before you could experience this. This is the dessert. This is the cherry on the cake, the cookies and cream, whatever floats your boat there. You got to grind through the first 3 projects in order to get to where you're at now, because if not, this is the exciting part, but the stuff that actually makes this event happen, you're putting it by the wayside. So you're not paying attention to the times, the schedule, the heats, how you get volunteers, who's sponsoring the equipment, how much equipment do we need, doing your timeline. That shit's boring as hell. Any event programmer out there knows that. Anything else after that, that's the fun part. But get through the tough part first, and once you accomplish that, now we could talk about the workouts and, the athlete's journey and what shirts they get and so on and so forth. So there's a process that needs to be done, and he's learning, and I'm mentoring him as it comes to these programs. But you got to put in the work first and the grind first, the foundation, in order to now turn around and tell somebody, look, I've run 7 different events, and this is the foundation that we've had. And now that data, now it just continues to repeat itself. You're able to look back at it and say, look, I know exactly what the market is looking for. And like I said, this gentleman that came to me and sat down and we discussed his event, I said, you're 5 years past. That would have been a good event 5 years ago. That's come and gone. The market doesn't want that anymore. So you have to put in the hard, ugly, boring work. And this is why a lot of people aren't successful, because they look at the big picture. They have these great ideas and they want to skip to that fun part, to that sexy fun part. If you don't have the capital in order to pay somebody to do these things for you, and you don't know how to do it, now you're in up shit's creek without a paddle type of thing. So one thing that you said too that I believe 1,000% is learning all components of your craft.